G'day everyone. Sorry, a little bit late there. Just organising my tea, getting the last few bits done. How are you all? I think we're a minute late. Anyway, forgive me. Oh dear, my laptop's starting to play the audio as well. Let's just turn that off quickly. Consummate professional. Let me just turn the video off on my laptop so we haven't got echo. How are you all? We're still here. We're still in Turkey. I'm still sat in my little corner. Michelle.
Hi everybody. Hi Chris. Hi Sally. Hi Petri.
Oh, Petri's in. Chris in. Sally. Hello. I haven't seen who's in. I was flapping around getting things organised. We're trying a slightly different time today, just a little bit later, an hour later. See if it works. We don't know what time to go. I really wish I could go at a time that would get all our buddies over in Australia and everyone else in the world, but this is 6 p.m. local time, so we've still got a bit of light. Take a look at this. This is curfew. That's outside my window. That's curfew in Turkey. Nobody's allowed out on the streets. I couldn't count up. There's probably about 12, 13 people out there.
Linda says, hi guys, hope Turkey is looking after you both well.
Oh, it is, Linda. It's doing fine. The title is just, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but we're Gary in Cambridge. Hello, mate. Linda, Jasper, how are you? Michelio, I think. How are you? Good to have you in.
Micah from Illinois.
I was hoping to get a fresh pea day from the baker's downstairs, but he hasn't. I can smell it cooking, but I'm starving. I was waiting to have a live pea day, but you know, the loaf, the Turkish loaf. For those of you that didn't know, and it smells so good. I've got baking coming up through the windows, and I just want to go and get one, but they're not ready yet. So we got to maybe wait another 30 minutes or so, and then I might send. I think I'll send Michelle to get it today. I took you guys down to the baker's last time, but it disconnects, and then when it reconnects, it gives me some grief. So if you don't mind, Michelle doesn't mind.
I'll think about it.
And we're already set up. We've got a little plate on the side. I'm going to have some feta, and I'm going to eat it this time. Even if you guys are with me, I'm going to eat it. I sat and dribbled through the whole of the last live stream with a sort of big chunk of feta and hot, steamy bread in front of me, but I'm going to try and eat it. Hello, Raj.
Cheap Shop Photography says, hi Steve. Quantum Entanglement says, hello Steve and better half.
Hey, Quantum.
Annie Ferraz says, hi Steve.
Hi, Annie. How are you? So, we are still getting this curfew here in Turkey. We had a 4-day curfew, and this is not lockdown. This is actually you're not allowed out of your house curfew. So it's not like the lockdown you'd be getting in many places around the world. It's literally you're bolted into the home and you're not meant to go out apart from maybe to the baker's to get bread. But so we had a 4-day curfew last week, which then rolled into a 3-day curfew this week. Of course, we had the curfew just before that. It is getting just a bit tiresome. I've got to be honest with you. It's getting a little bit tiresome, and we are getting, Michelle and I are starting to bounce a little bit off the walls because we really need to get out a bit more often. I mean, tomorrow the curfew is lifted, and Michelle and I go for a big walk. And if it's not too bad, we'll try and do a live stream walking next week if they don't close us down again. Yeah, we're just finding it a little bit hard at the moment because look, how are you guys? I mean, I should ask. I always feel a little bit awkward complaining about anything because there's no real big issues going on here, but we are starting to get to the stage where we just wish we could get on and do something. We want to get and do our big walk in Europe, and it's kind of frustrating. We started watching a few YouTube videos about the walks, and we've been reading up about the Camino de Santiago and which places to stay. But of course, it's all closed at the moment. but we're getting really stir crazy, and we need to get on. I mean, it's beautiful, right? I put the title "Stuck in Paradise" or "Lockdown in Paradise." Couldn't be a nicer place, really. I mean, Turkey, Istanbul is absolutely gorgeous. The people here are really friendly. But what good is really being in a country if you can't experience the country? You can't experience the food culture. You can't experience getting out in the streets. Um, it is starting to get to us just a little bit, and we're probably a little more grouchy than we normally would be. Um, that's a lot to do with not being able to get out. And I'm also finding it a bit strange now because they brought in a mask rule here in Istanbul, in Turkey. They want people to wear masks in shop, which is fine, but it just absolutely astounds me how and kind of disappoints me a little bit is just how quickly people in the main streets have just started wearing masks in the parks, out in the fully open 30 meters away from people. They're still walking around with masks, and it just seems like, I think if the government told them to wear a pink tutu and a bow tie, they would literally do it. It troubles me a little bit just how sheepish people have been, how quickly we've just conformed with absolutely everything. I don't know what you people think. I know I can be a bit controversial, but it is a little sad to see. It's not just small numbers. It's like almost everybody here now is walking around like they're in sort of the Midwich Cuckoos or some sort of strange dystopia. And that can start to affect people. I think we're all starting to feel um, a little bit maddened by the situation, a little resentful maybe by the situation. This constant sort of, it's been what we've been here now 8 weeks, and we're not getting anything done. We're not getting the experience of Turkey that we'd like. Beautiful people here, by the way. Most of the people you've just seen in the street, I know. I've started to know the people down there. Mind, they shouldn't be out on the streets today.
Linda Russell says, thankful that Korea hasn't had any kind of lockdowns at all. We just have constant reminders by text about social distancing. Korea's numbers are super low these days too. Come back.
Yeah, and Korea, we've been looking at a lot of stuff about Korea, and I do, strangely enough, I miss Korea and Japan and China, just the freshness and I miss some of the things about South Korea, we're talking about South Korea, of course, not North Korea.
Well, a couple of people are here also saying about Kim Jong-un is alive and he's on his pleasure island. And someone says it was mentioned the Chinese tried to take over North Korea. And then somebody else said the video they showed, there may have been an older video.
Yeah, let's not speculate. I still think there's problems in North Korea. There's definitely some issues going on. I mean, they would refute them pretty quickly. They wouldn't just send out some strange picture of a guy cutting a ribbon that's not really verified. So we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the fact that we're going crazy. We're going crazy.
Chris Hereford says, I think like you, Steve, I've been out a few times minus a mask. And
I won't wear the mask in the streets when I'm not near people. I just will not do it because I want the fresh air around my lungs. I don't want that carbon monoxide recycled through my face. I don't want to be also walking around like some sort of drone. And I just feel like it's and I get a lot of flack from a lot of people about masks. I really don't care. I truly don't care what your opinion is about masks. It's you are welcome. Everybody's welcome to their own opinions. I actually truly have a problem with them being worn to the manner that we've got them here in. And I also, again, just today saw the guy down in the shop pulling his mask down to talk to somebody just today with his fingers and across his nose and across his mouth, and then he goes back and starts serving people. So I know for sure that it's not a very good way, but it's not just even to do with the mask. What's troubling me most is this compliant. The way I thought the way Michelle and I lived was unusual. We do live outside the system a little bit, and we do live a little bit of a strange, eclectic sort of lifestyle. But I thought more people were like us, and I do think. But I'm surprised just how so many people have just. There was maybe I'm reading the wrong reports. I see people, dobbing in their neighbours for going out too often. I really despise that sort of behavior, because everybody's allowed the freedom to do what they want. And even I was thinking before, if they'd said, say, let's take, because it's close to us, the United Kingdom, where they closed down all the restaurants and they closed down all the businesses. Let's say they said, look, you can keep your restaurant open as long as you have minimal a certain distance between tables, and all the staff have protective gear so that they can have masks, absolutely, masks and gloves. Say they'd said that. Now a lot of people say, well, yeah, that will spread the virus, but you don't have to go to the restaurants. You can actually choose not to, and in which case you can completely isolate yourself and you're perfectly safe. If you have a restaurant, you don't have to open the restaurant. You can actually close it. You can say, no, I choose to close the restaurant. I don't think it's safe. But if you want that option to open your restaurant, you open it, excellent. You open the restaurant up. If people come, they come. You put down the precautions, the right sort of precautions. It shouldn't trouble you, because the only people that are actually going to be harmed are the people that choose to open the restaurants, choose to work in the restaurants, and choose to go to this line that's being thrown down to everyone. Don't go out, don't do this, don't go walking, and there's no rules. It doesn't matter whether you're central London or you're central Istanbul, or you live out in the Cotswolds a million miles from anywhere and there's no COVID. You're all all the rules are the same.
So Paul Webber's giving you $25 and says, have a drink on me.
Paul, you are way too kind, mate. And Paul, actually, may I say, Paul, that you also joined us on Patreon, which is a really kind thing, man. I love it. And I think we might start doing a little bit more. I don't like to, when we start our walk, I might do a little bit more for the Patreon members, but I want to keep everything. I've always said I want to keep everything for everybody. So it's always been the plan to do so. But Paul, thank you very much. You're an absolute gentleman.
Gordak says, Steve, there's a Turkish product called Turkish Cologne. It's the best sanitizer, 80% alcohol. Use it on your hands. You can find it anywhere in Istanbul.
Well, you can't find it anywhere, but I know the stuff you're talking about. But it's kind of cool. A lot of places around us have the Turkish Cologne. You go when the first lockdown came along and the restaurants were still open, they had limited seating. They didn't let lots of people come in, and they always hand sanitized on the way into the restaurants and on the way out of the restaurants. And the staff were wearing gloves. They weren't wearing masks at the time, and things were going hunky dory. And so that cologne was being used a great deal, but it's just the crackdown, this sort of like single rule for everybody, and the way everybody is conforming. I'm not saying that I'm not condoning any behavior, but I'm saying that we should be able to behave the way we choose to behave. And it's troubling. It's troubling.
Mum 71 said, wants to know how Paul did that.
Paul would have clicked on there's a little dollar sign, I think, near this
just below where you type.
Anyway, please, it's very kind. There's a little dollar sign, and it's called a super chat, and it's really kind. And Paul, thank you very much.
So Tammy says, people here are struggling with the same thing, broad lockdown rules, but only certain areas dealing with big outbreak numbers.
Hi, Tammy.
Other areas
Tammy's in.
Hardly have any infections.
I know, and there's mixed messages coming out from Turkey. At one stage we were one of the worst affected areas, and yet on the street I see very little, and from people I speak to, there's very little little sort of gossip going around about infections and things. There's very little. There's not a great deal. Sure, the number, it's very easy to create a set of numbers. X number of people have been sick and died in any one country. You can do it for any city in the world, and they're invariably they are already people who are fairly sick or poorly, or there are people that are of a certain age, got respiratory problems, and you will find examples. I know you'll find examples of them not, but the fact that we've closed everything down for this, I think, is long term. Is creating a lot of stress and anxiety in people, and it's certainly Michelle and I are starting to feel like we just want to get going. We were thinking of doing a YouTube video, which will probably get everyone to go up, but escape from Istanbul and just set off, get our bags, and just set off walking and get out and just do something, because. Yeah, we're at that stage.
Chris Garton says, hi guys, have you been out in the last few days or still locked down? Just tuned in.
The last 3 days, including today, have been no walking, no going out of the building. Basically, you can pop to the baker's, but my baker's is literally outside the front door, so that doesn't help. And you could technically go for a little walk, pretending you're going to a baker's further away, but there are police on the street, and they are handing out fines, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, it's.
And he says they're calling it cabin fever. Chris says it's been extended to another 2 weeks here in India.
Well, it's a lot of places are getting this extension, but I'm hoping you're all coping well with it. Some people are less affected. To be honest, Michelle and I were maybe a little less affected, I suppose. You know, we're not complaining. No, we are complaining. We are complaining.
So DJ Me says older generation here in the UK are rebelling against the lockdown.
Can I say good for them? I mean, without getting a whole load of sort of grief. I talked to my family back in Australia, and it's possibly one of the least affected places in Australia. I think there's still people are out and about. They're going for walks. There's actually around where my family live. There's a lot of people out on bikes all day, cycling, going out with their kids, going out with the family. So there's a good atmosphere. We don't have that here in Turkey. Kids have been kept in their homes now for 2 months. They're not allowed out of their homes. So teenagers and kids, they are. If you just saw the clip that I put there, there's probably 3 or 4 kids out there from the age of sort of 3 and above. They're not meant to be out, but kids are not meant to be out. Pensioners are not meant to be out. And to be honest, almost none of them are following well, no, a lot of them must be following the rules, because there are nowhere near the number of children out on the street than you would expect. What was that?
Tammy says, I'm glad I'm not the one in charge. Open too soon and you'll be blamed with the death of many people, but hold it too long and you get pushed back.
Well, it's difficult, Tammy, because you know the ones in charge are rarely right, but that's often because the ones in charge are rarely right. There was a great deal of pressure from country to country put upon people to conform and to do the same as their neighbours, and everybody has done it, but I watch a lot of alternative type media reports. I watch a lot of stuff because you can't just rely on the mainstream media. So I watch a lot of information out there, and it's quite shocking, really, some of the statistics and facts that are going around. And I think we're going to really regret greatly what our governments have done, whether or not they open the brakes too early, open the borders too early or not. I think we're going to regret greatly what's been done. And I don't want to. This stream will be a little bit more about it. Last time I didn't want to speak about it, but
Jennifer Cartier says hello, and DJ Me says, Steve, you'll be driving through red lights at this rate, you rebel.
Absolutely. You keep an eye on the chats. I'm seeing some strange things popping up that don't look relevant.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I mean, driving through red lights. I haven't got a car. But we've always been a little bit rebellious, Michelle and I. Not in a sort of like devil may care sort of, but we do tend to live outside the system somewhat. So it's just hard because I've got plans for this year, things we want to do, and they I don't mind a sort of a month's knockback and sitting around, but this is 2 months now, creeping into 3 months, and it's getting a little bit sort of frustrating. And a lot of people said to us earlier on, why didn't you go back to Australia? Well, what's the point? We're on a journey. And we're really getting quite excited about going to do the Camino to Santiago and that's going to be a great walk. And we're going to vlog a lot of that, actually. We're going to film a great deal, maybe even a daily vlog while we walk the Camino. So it's going to be a lot of fun for us, and hopefully a lot of fun for you guys to join us on the way. And it's just, when will it happen? We don't know. Could it happen in? We wanted to go in May. We were supposed to be going pretty much now. Will it be June? Will it be July? I mean, effectively, we should be doing it. We might be able to do it in June, but a lot will depend on whether the Turkish borders open up. I think the other thing is I'm we always initially hoped that at the end of this it would open up and then we could explore and have a great time in Turkey. But I think it'll be quite a few months before the Turkey we want to see is available to us. I don't think there's going to, there's not going to be any great charm in being in a country where people are still paranoid and the shops are still open. You can't go into any restaurants and sit down and just have a good time and relax and enjoy your time. I've got to be careful what I say, because I know I can be controversial and I can upset a few people. So please also let people have different opinions. Don't get upset with people because they don't agree with you about wearing a mask or whether or not. Like I said to you, if the decision had been made to say all businesses may stay open, a lot of people find that an absolute abhorrent thought, that all businesses and retail restaurants and things may stay open if they choose to. The only restaurants that would stay open are the ones that chose to stay open, and the only ones that stay open that would have guests. You're not going to say, oh, I'm really scared about this coronavirus, but the restaurants are open, I'll go and sit in them. So you're not actually going to be in those restaurants eating if you want to self-isolate yourself, but you have the choice. Now, there is some grey areas. You might have staff that have to work in restaurants, and I think rules have to come in to say, look, you can't force staff to work in certain conditions. Have to be some rules, but there didn't need to be, in my opinion, this draconian set of rules that they've brought out that have caused this very much dystopic sort of world that we're in at the moment. Whereas last week, when I did get out for a walk, it looked to me in the streets of Turkey like I was in a movie set. It was just like it was crazy to see somebody walking in the full, fresh, open air, not closer than maybe 500 meters even from another person with a great big mask over their face. You start to want to sort of throw something at them and say, oi, wake up. You're not going to catch something from being in a field 100 miles away from anybody. Just take it off and get some air, for crying out loud. But people are really, really, really following these rules to the letter, and not in small numbers, but in big numbers. I'm going to upset a lot of people in the stream. I don't care. Truly, please forgive me if it's not your cup of tea. Here's my cup of tea.
Cheryl says, hi, hey Steve, stopping in to say hi. We're still shut down here in Arizona. It's not hard to stay home in 100-degree weather. No,
Arizona gets pretty warm. So yeah, there's lots of things. I think actually the more I've looked at some other countries, it's probably not quite as strict as we have here. So yeah, maybe I'm just feeling it a bit because of the way the Turkish government have handled it. You know how they kicked off the first time, they locked everybody in. I do appreciate, Tammy, that there's a lot of the medical services and things, but we're also getting a lot of feedback. For instance, they built a lot of facilities in the UK. I mean, they built what they call Nightingale hospitals, and they've spent many tens of millions, perhaps even billions of dollars purchasing equipment and what have you for these places, and they're putting on the news video of these places looking as if they're overwhelmed, and then the very next day you can go onto social media and find somebody on Facebook going to the very same facility and seeing that they're completely empty and they're not even being used. I think the O2 Centre in London has got about, capacity of X thousand people, has got about 6 people in it at the moment, and it's just, we always said at the beginning of this epidemic that it was, and I know people still saying to me, it's not flu. It is a flu. I mean, there is no debating that. Even the common cold is a form of coronavirus. They're all from the same families, but it is a much more serious version of this, and it certainly is killing people, as is the flu killing people. So to see the sort of the hysteria that's going around with this is it's just a little bit concerning.
So DJ Me said, no, they spent pounds in the UK, Steve, not dollars.
Yes, sorry, I'm so used to dollars, I forget about your quaint English pounds.
Chris Garton says, what are your immediate plans in the next few weeks? If the lockdown continues, will you try to leave? I think Spain are trying to slowly get back to normal again.
The initial plans were always to spend as much time as we could here in Turkey after the lockdown, and then go and explore Cappadocia, go and explore the coastal areas and explore more here. But I think it's starting to that may change a little bit if we feel that Turkey itself is going to drag itself slowly like a sort of swamp monster out of this event, and it's just going to become many weeks of troubled traveling and troubled getting around. We probably would be better, we're thinking we probably would be better just, on the open road doing our walk. But that really relies upon the borders between Spain and France being free flowing. So the mainstream media would have you believe everything's completely locked down. And yet I saw a young girl who was doing a travel show the other day, driving between France and Germany through Belgium and Brussels and a few other places that she had to drive through. And she said there were no border checks whatsoever. There was nothing at all. Well, she didn't say that. Well, she filmed the fact that there was no stops at the border, and she went through without any issues whatsoever. But there's a lot of information out there that says these borders are hammered closed at the moment, and you wouldn't get through them. Now, what we want to do is walk, and it's 800 kilometers, and it's out in the open. And I think we would be better off spending a month and a half doing that than we would be trying to explore a country that's still sort of healing itself from the crisis that's been going on at the moment. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you viewers think?
Andrew Fox says, I missed, where are you in Turkey?
We're in Istanbul, mate. We're in Istanbul.
A says,
lovely place, by the way.
Where do you plan to travel next after things calm down?
That we've just been talking about. Yeah, ask me a question that I've already answered. Michelle's covering the questions. Throw them up. Questions, comments.
So Chris Garton said, maybe
beat on me if you have to.
You should head to Sweden, Paul.
Sweden, a lot of people, there's a lot of analytics going around about Sweden, because of course Sweden are getting problems also from deaths from the coronavirus. But the numbers are no different than their neighbours, and they're no different than almost every other European country. But the Swedes have not shut down their schools and businesses, and they stand to have a fraction of the actual social damage that's happening to other parts of the European Union. So yes, they are having similar effects, but then this is all a bit like bean counting, which once you actually decide to take a note of every single person in your community that has died of a certain virus, those numbers are going to be there. You can't hide them if you decide to note them. And like I've said before, if you took 2018, 2019 figures of 650,000 people that died of the common flu in just the countries that register it, not in countries that don't register it, if you took that figure and you every single day in the news, you said, okay, another 100,000 people in Europe, another 200,000 people in the US. Every single day that was the news, it would keep people completely in fear. So, I do think that a lot of what Sweden have done is possibly the better way to have done it. But I'm open. No, I'm open to people's opinions, and I would never actually bash down on somebody for having a different opinion than me. But Michelle and I, we're still keeping fairly good, but it's hard. It's hard a little bit in these four walls. We've got this little apartment. That's our kitchen. From that cupboard to there is our kitchen. It's got a sink, a hob, we've got no oven, so we're not getting the full Turkish experience anymore, and we're sort of at the stage where we're wondering if we could just cross the border into maybe to Bulgaria or somewhere, or head into Greece or anything really, just to get life, kickstart life again. Because I am absolutely not afraid. I'm sorry to, and I know some people want me to be, but I am absolutely 100% not afraid of this virus. I don't want elderly people and poor and sick people to die of this virus. I certainly don't want them to die of the common cold. I don't want them to die of the common flu viruses either, of which, by the way, those numbers are down as well. The common flu virus is massively down because of these actions that we've taken out. But I heard, an interesting thing said on a show the other day. They said, in we lose hundreds of thousands of people get killed every year by another very common thing which could be cured in a flinch, and that would be by saying that the speed limits on the road should be no more than 15 miles an hour all over the country, across motorways, across everywhere. And it's a ridiculous idea, isn't it? But the truth is, if speed limits were kept down to 15 miles an hour in every country in the world, road deaths would absolutely plummet. But the government doesn't choose to do that because it says, okay, we can't expect people to just drive around everywhere in the country at 15 miles an hour just because some people might die, in cars. So they allow people to drive fast in cars, and occasionally people die, but not small numbers. Hundreds of thousands of people die every year. That could be solved by really draconian measures, really harsh draconian measures, saying to every driver in the country, you may not drive over 15 miles an hour, and actually throttling cars, stopping them from going above 15 miles an hour. But we don't do that because we say as a society, we accept that people will die on the roads. And sometimes it will be children and families and young mothers and saddest of sad stories. But we allow people still to drive at 100 kilometers an hour or 70 miles an hour. We don't take that action. And it's the same with these viruses. We could actually say we don't want anyone to die from shingles or the measles.
Tammy says, interesting analogy, Steve. And Annie says, you can die from something or live another 40 years. No one knows. Can't stay afraid of dying for the next 40 years.
Yeah, and you could say, okay, we don't want anyone to die of shingles. We don't want anyone to die of let's say, for AIDS, for instance. Say if in the 1980s, was it in the 80s with the AIDS epidemic? Say if they said in the 1980s, okay, nobody's allowed out of their house for 5 months, would we have accepted it? No, we would not have done. Okay, that's possibly not a great analogy. It's not passed in the same manner, but we could stop people. We could end right this moment anybody dying from the common cold, and I tell you, many thousands of elderly people a year die from the common cold. It isn't just like the COVID virus. It isn't often from the cold they die. It's from getting pneumonia in their lungs from having it that causes the big problems. So what do? Do we say every year, no, we don't want any pensioners to die of the common cold, leading to pneumonia? Let's shut down all the borders, shut down every restaurant, shut down everything in life. No, we don't. We accept a certain amount of people will die from various things, cars driving, electrical faulty appliances. We don't stop selling appliances because occasionally somebody dies from a faulty one. We don't stop planes from taking off because every sort of 600,000 planes one crashes. We don't say you can't, we're not going to take any, there'll be no more flights. We don't do that. And yet we've done it here with this. We've absolutely pulled the plug on all of society. And I really, it is frustrating me. It is starting to get on my nerves a little bit, as you can probably tell.
Orlando says, good evening to you both. Thanks for your videos. My wife Cheryl and I enjoy your videos. Really helps to see what is going on outside of our little world here in Tucson, Arizona. Tucson, Arizona. Thank you, Orlando. Cheryl.
Thank you, Orlando. Cheryl. Lovely.
Feral Opera says, I'm in Bulgaria, beaches are open.
Now here we're really shut down. The Turkish government have gone fairly extreme, and actually, I'll show you again. Don't even need to look, but come here. That's what a Turkish curfew looks like. I'm not going to show it too long. I don't want to get into trouble.
Bread might be there.
They're probably waiting because the bread's fresh, but they've been out there for about 4 hours now. So yeah, that's what a curfew looks. And it's basically, it is people using common sense. They're not out there sort of kissing each other or sort of hugging. They're staying a little distance apart. Pardon me. They're staying a little distance apart. They're not, they're not shaking hands as they normally would. They're not, they're keeping their hands fairly clean. The baker's very careful. He's wearing masks and gloves, and people are being very cautious about how they pay for things. It's just, that's what's happening. They are all breaking all of the rules. But there's an old saying, I think it's something like, rules are made for the guidance of monkeys and idiots, and they're to be, I forget if you can remember it, throw it down. It's, to be adhered to at all time. I forget the saying, but there's, rules are there for the guidance, and they often are there to guide people who don't think, who can't consider what's going on. But actually, to assume that people are like that is just disrespectful. I think most people actually do have the powers and the common sense to know when they're told. And I'm afraid your mainstream media and your tabloids constantly pointing their camera at two people that are maybe kissing in a park to make it seem, because you'll hear this argument from people all the time. Oh yeah, but people are going to the beaches when they shouldn't go to the beaches. Mostly they are not. When you get a park full of people who are breaking the rules, you're looking at, in a population, say, of the UK of 67 million people, you're talking about less than 1/100% of people that are doing it. And that's Darwin's law of evolution, is it not? If those people want to go out into a park and kiss every stranger they meet, based on the fact the stranger's willing to kiss them back, it's not a one-way trip, this thing. You can't say basically, that's bad because he's out kissing strangers. Only if they're kissing them back, they're going to end up getting sick and they're going to die. And that's the story of basically, the strongest survive, if that's what you want to do. But people are not. They're out in a park generally keeping their distance and being respectful, but they're getting penalised for it, and it's getting on my nerves. I'm getting on everybody's nerves. It was probably getting on my nerves a little bit earlier than most.
Mia says, hi Steve and Michelle, love to you both.
Hey Mia.
I agree with you totally. Just got back from the beach.
Just got back from the cinema. Anyone? Yeah, just got back from the cinema. Just been out to the footy. There's a lot of people now on social media pointing at Sweden, saying, they've got people dying too. And it is almost like that. The Swedes, they're dying too. It is almost like that, but please grow up. They actually have got no worse figures than some other parts of the world, and they haven't destroyed their economies. They probably will do. I don't know the exact update information on Sweden, because I've kind of given up following it. Haven't you all? Has anyone else given up? I mean, I'm pleased that you're here listening to me sort of droning on, but as a rule, I'm trying to do streams now that are nothing to do with this. But yesterday I was getting a little bit anxious, was I, Michelle?
You were. And then you got even more anxious because you thought yesterday was Sunday and you thought you could go out today.
I said to Michelle yesterday, I said, I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning. I'm going to go for a big walk. And she said, it's Saturday. I said, because they had the Friday curfew as well, and I felt really sort of, I don't know, I wasn't too happy. I was out today talking to a neighbour of mine. I was just checking whether the bread was ready, and he was telling me what time. I was out chatting with him in the street. He wasn't wearing a mask, I wasn't. We were stood sort of several feet apart and just having a chat, and it was so nice, because I'm a socialholic, I need people. I need people to talk to. I need people to be around. And I know a lot of people They don't need that, but if you do need sort of social interaction, it's really hard. Um, uh, yeah, I see that something about being diagnosed. I don't want to be diagnosed. I don't want to get tested for some stupid thing. And now there's this nonsense about an app going around that the government are gonna trace everywhere you've ever been by having an app on your phone that will actually monitor where you've been. And then if you get sick, everybody who's near you with a phone gets notified. My Lord, is that Big Brother has gone crazy. You don't have to agree with me.
So Rena C says,
that's what I feel.
Rena C
Hey,
said,
Rena.
hello from Boston. Another one who looks back there.
Thank you, Rena, for joining the Patreon as well, and thank you for the upgrade recently. You're an absolute sweetheart. Thank you.
So almost noon time here. Glad to see you're both doing well. Agree with your mindset. I do wish your accommodations had a balcony for you to enjoy.
We chatted with a girl above us the other day. Actually went and had a glass of wine and a talk. Oh dear, slap wrist. Now we're in trouble. And we actually sat out on her balcony. She's got a lovely balcony with a big sitting area. But the weather's been pretty cold since we got here. It's been pretty cold and grim and really sort of unpleasant. So I like my little enclosed balcony. And this technically is a balcony.
And she's a lot higher, so you wouldn't get the interaction with the street.
Yeah, and so I'm happy. I'm kind of happy. I wouldn't mind a balcony, but only when the weather's nice. And it's been a little bit, been a little bit iffy to sit out on a balcony. So you need good weather for it. And to be honest, I right now I could do with that walk. I could do with, the Santiago the Camino de Santiago, or the Way of St. John, is a walk from France all the way across Spain. It's 800, 900 kilometers. For those you who don't know, Michelle and I are planning to do that. We've been talking about doing it for a couple of years, maybe now, and this was our year to do it. And I am so looking forward to it. Can you imagine how unfit we're going to be, though? We were watching a young girl who was doing it on a video the other day, and they were getting blisters and sores and all sorts of things. And I said to Michelle, that we've got that to look forward to.
I still do it.
Oh yeah, we'll still be doing it. It's absolutely. Oh, hit the thumbs up, by the way. 17 thumbs up. Let's get some more, because apparently YouTube like it. And I do. And Michelle does.
DJ Me says, enough is enough, surely. Time for the world to reboot itself.
Yeah, I think enough was enough quite some time ago. I don't know. It is hard for those that rule, and I think they're possibly going to be judged quite harshly. But I think each time I hear another sort of liberty has been taken away, I think particularly the liberty, the freedom to actually say what you think without being sort of shouted down. We're all allowed different opinions. I got into a bit of a trouble with one of my old time subscribers because I said something they didn't agree with. And I just think it's a bit sad, because I don't ever feel, if somebody says something that strongly goes against the way I believe, that I could ever feel bad towards that person. I might say to them, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I'm never going to say to somebody they should change the way they think. I might say something that might make them think another way, perhaps. I might talk to you about a little girl outside. I don't know if you can hear her. We've got a little girl on this street who shouldn't be out, because actually it is meant to be locked down. And she's that's me again. She's just behind that lad there. I'm going to get in trouble because I know some of the locals actually watch the live stream. She is out once a day, screaming and screaming and screaming at the top of her voice. She's out with, I don't know if it's her father or her grandfather, and she'll be out there screaming for an hour, sometimes 2 hours at a time. She will literally just scream the street down, and nobody does anything. It's just kind of like you sit as parents ourselves, Michelle and I think, oh my Lord. But they just let her, and she doesn't stop. She's been screaming now for an hour. She's a little quieter. If I open the window, which I would like to, it's a little bit sort of stuffy in here. It sounds like she's in the room with you, and that's another thing that's getting on my nerves a little bit. I like the good about being on the street, but I wish they'd take her home, because I wish they'd taken her home about an hour and a half ago, to be frank.
Mia says, is she screaming for the bread?
She's screaming because nobody tells her not to, and you know, as parents, Michelle and I look at it and say, oh my Lord, you know, they constantly give her the wrong sort of attention for screaming. She screams, they give her what she wants. She screams a bit more. It's like, you know, training a dog really, but she screams, they give her what she wants. She screams more. They go to take her home and she screams, so they bring her back. They go to take her home. She screams. I mean, like really screams, and then they sit her on one of the scooters down there, and you can tell all the other adults around are going, oh my Lord, give our ears a rest. But the family don't seem to have that. So if you're watching anyone from that family, you know what I think.
The Neurodrift says, I wish you both the best. I hope you both have a wonderful day.
We thank you very much.
And Chris Garden says, if you could eventually get into Spain or France, I'm sure the Camino would be better bet as it's outside of cities.
Yes, the only thing is at the moment there's nowhere. The Camino, the walk of the Camino is very much it's not a camping walk. It's not a wilderness walk. It's a sort of town to town walk, and so people who walk that route stay in the albergues. There's the sort of like guest houses along the way, and there's no other real options. You've got to stay in the guest houses, and they're all shut. They've literally, so you would have 35 days minimum of walking with nowhere to stay, because firstly it's illegal to camp in Spain. You can't camp in any of those places, and if there's nowhere to stay, that's the problem. Otherwise we would by hook or by crook get there and do the walk. At the moment, everywhere along the route, all the supports along that route has shut down. So whether we'll do something else, I don't know. I know there's one or two other friends of mine that were going to do that walk this year as well. Another YouTuber called Gabriel was also going to do the walk, and we'd spoken about it, and I think they're all cancelling. Michelle and I, we're still planning on doing it. I would love it in the future that we don't have to talk about this, and it's a little bit of a distant memory to us all, and hopefully one that isn't going to linger. So
Charles says we need to get you back on the road so we can travel too. We watch so we see what it's like everywhere else. Yeah,
because I'm not showing you much, right? I'm showing you this corner of this window. I can't even. Next week, I promise I'm going to take you out, and I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm going to upset a lot of people. But actually, there is no reason not. There's no law against wearing a mask, and there is stacks of room on the street to avoid people. So I'm just going to go out and get some fresh air and take you for a walk around Istanbul and show you what there is. And if I have to go into a place, into a establishment, I will wear a mask. Of course I will. That's the laws. That's the rules. Am I doing it because I'm afraid of catching a virus? No, I'm doing it purely because that's the rules. Otherwise, I would not do it, because I don't think it's beneficial in any way whatsoever. In fact, as I said before, I think a lot of the shop people here are not actually doing us any favors.
Petri says, honestly, I may not agree with everything you say, but I'd rather hear a different perspective from someone I like, so we can respectful, so I can try to empathise with another stranger with the same view.
Thanks, Petri, and that's all we can ask of anybody, isn't it? That we all accept. Because Petri, if you were to say to me what the way you feel, I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't, come down on you for having that opinion. And I don't actually mind the people that want to wear masks. I think it's perfectly fine, because it doesn't affect me. Certainly, I think in some instances, one particular local shop where I do see him taking it on and off. Here's my mask. Look. Here's what's happening when I go in to get my groceries. Right, gloves on, and they pull them down, pull the mask down across their nose, across their mouth. Yeah, who's coming in the shop next? All right, then I'll serve you. And then they pull it back up like this, and then they get the food and they serve it to you. That's what we're up against. Now, I tell you, if they weren't wearing a mask, they'd probably be more mindful about not playing with their mouth before serving a customer. They'd probably be a little bit more mindful about it in general. But because it's uncomfortable, if you wear these things, or the cloth ones, for more than sort of, and in a shop, they have to wear them for hours upon hours. they do find that it gets hot and sticky inside, and the breathing becomes uncomfortable, so they're pulling them down all the time. Now, people can say that's not the right way to wear a mask, or they're not even wearing the right, but you can't make a law that forces people to not only wear the mask, but also behave in a certain manner with them. So I think if that guy in the shop happened to come down with a cold, just a common cold, or common influenza, or COVID, the chances that he's going to hand it on to every single customer in that shop has skyrocketed. It is absolutely exponentially raised because I see him do it when I go in there, and I only go in there for a minute a day. I'm suspecting that he's doing it all day long. So there you go.
Linda Russell says, I don't like to wear a mask either, but when I'm at work, we are told we must wear a mask at all times because I teach children. We have our children washing hands hourly as well. Masks are a pain in the butt for people who wear glasses as they fog up, and
they do fog
no
up.
end of pain. The fact that weather is getting warmer also makes it harder to wear masks too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've never been a fan, and I've made my points.
Chris the Butcher says, how are you, Stevie?
Hey Chris, how are you, mate? Very good. I'm very good, mate. I'm a little bit grouchy today. A little bit grouchy. Not anything special. Not a special level of grouchy. Just a little bit. I said to Michelle, I'm not going to not talk about the issues that we have at the moment. I've kind of avoided them a little bit and kept things a little bit upbeat. But do you fancy seeing if we can get some bread, Michelle? Do you think there'll be one? Let's have a look out there. I could go down. Do you want to go and have a little look and just pop back up?
Are they buying it yet?
Are people?
Is it 3?
Oh, we'll wait.
You want to wait?
We'll wait a moment.
We'll wait, okay.
We'll wait a moment.
You got your tea?
Probably if we go and get some, 3 liras. 3 shiny liras for a lovely bread. I'm not eating bread, by the way, at the moment. I only ever do this at live streams because we're putting on weight. That is a Turkish lira. There we go. 1 Turkish lira. Can you see that? Beautiful shiny ones.
Rena says, Steve, are you hungry? Yes, he's very hungry.
I'm very hungry. You know, I read recently a little article. They were talking about, you know, that people get grouchy with each other when they're hungry. So hungry is a true thing. And they say the more people go on to sort of, you know, eating differently, eating different diets and things, the more likely it's causing sort of fights and aggression. Another fascinating thing, and this one really is true, I can vouch for this. I read about this back when we were still living in bricks and mortar back in Australia. An interesting fact is that apparently you buy things, you don't just buy lots of food. You know, if you go to the supermarket and you're starving, so you buy all the snacks and it's the worst thing in the world. Apparently also those same receptors in your brain that make you want to buy food make you want to buy rubbish as well. So never go shopping, even for clothing or into a shopping mall when you're hungry, because you'll come back with a satellite dish, a bag of sort of peanuts, and probably lots of clothing and things that you didn't know that you even wanted, because the same sort of receptors in your brain will trigger purchasing as they will. So if you want to stop people buying, stop yourself from buying lots of stuff, have a good meal before you go shopping.
Chris the Butcher says, you and me both, it must be a grouchy kind of day.
It is, Chris. It is, Chris. It's not so much grouchy. Michelle and I are fine, but I've actually also I've also been waiting for the baker
He's late today, isn't he?
and the candlestick maker to get his bread done. I can smell it, but I have had today. It's now 6:56, close to 7 o'clock in the evening, and all I've had today is a bowl of cereal earlier this morning. And the reason I've only had a bowl of cereal is because we haven't got much in, and we're getting to that sort of end of the 3 days where we're running out of fresh produce, aren't we, Michelle?
Yeah. Well, we were waiting as well. We thought maybe that he will have bread, and he's normally ready by about 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and I thought I'm going to eat actually before I go live today. I'm going to have some beautiful fresh pide and some nice feta cheese, which I really love. And then when I went down there, I was chatting with the lad down there. He said, no, they'll be later today. So,
Johannes Joestar says, hello Steve, tuning in from Istanbul for a short time.
Good day, mate.
So you're
In
here for a
Istanbul
short
as well.
time.
So are you here? Are you living in Istanbul? Or are you like us stuck in Istanbul?
And
It's a beautiful place to be stuck, but I was starting to lament that it's getting to the stage where it's not really Istanbul, is it? I mean, you know, this is not really Istanbul. These two streets that we get to sort of stroll around, and these four walls of this little tiny apartment that we're in, is not Istanbul. So the fact that we initially, when we got here, felt it was a little bit exotic, it's getting a little bit plain, to be honest. And there's just nothing. You live in Istanbul. I'm Turkey. Cool, man.
So
I went down to the town. We had a couple of days last week. Then you know that we were allowed to go out, and I went down to the town because I said to Michelle, I really fancy getting a ukulele or a small guitar. And there's a great little shop we saw when we first arrived here, and it's a music shop down towards Karakoy area, and they were shut. When I got there, they were shut. They'd closed for business. And there was a lad that was working in there that put his head out the door because he was doing some stock taking or something, and he said, no, they won't be opening anytime soon. And he said, you can always order online, but the problem with ordering online is we're not sure that we get it delivered here, and how well the post would work. So I would love to have. We could do ukulele lessons together, couldn't we? Is anyone out there plays the ukulele? Anybody fancy learning? Ukulele would have been a little bit of fun. It lifts your spirits as well to have something to play. So what else has been going on, Michelle? There's not much else been going on really, has there?
No. Michael Costa said there's more than one Camino.
There is more than one Camino, but we're talking about the French way. There's the Camino de Santiago can be almost the original concept of the Camino de Santiago was to walk from your home, and people don't often know that there are many different Camino de Santiago ways, but the original pilgrims would have walked from their home, whether it was in Italy, whether it was in Germany, they would have walked the whole distance to what's the name of the church?
Yes.
Michelle can Google it. So they would have walked the whole distance, but now there are a number of fixed pathways. There's one that goes from the south of Spain all the way up. I think there's one that goes up through Portugal. There's the one that most frequently is done, which is called the French way, where you walk from the French border all the way across. And there's a few variants of even that particular walk, and that's the one we want to do. We want to walk from France because we used to live in France and we love France. We love the French people, we love the French food, and we want to walk through Spain because we love Spain, we love Spanish people.
Santiago de Compostela.
Santiago de Compostela.
Which is the St. James the Great.
Yeah, Santiago, I think in English is St. James. So in the way of St. James would be the common English way, but it doesn't sound as cool, does it, as the Camino de Santiago.
So James Cole says one lira 50 is what I pay for bread.
That's for the regular. That's for the regular loaf. I think we pay about that. How much do you pay for a simit? Simit is my favourite. It's like a sort of like a bagel covered in sesame seeds. Beautiful. I love them. I ate 2 a day for the first month that we were here, and then we've got some little travel scales. Do you want to grab them and I'll show you? We travel with scales mainly because I've got to occasionally check that we're not overdoing it, because the first 3 years we were traveling I put on a lot of weight, and then we found these little things here. These are kind of cool. They're actually tiny little scales that fit in our backpack, and the little thing pops out and you can weigh yourself. They're small enough to carry, and it's a ridiculous thing to take with you traveling, but Michelle and I don't carry a lot of stuff, so we give ourselves, that's one of our luxury indulgences. So I'd rather have a ukulele.
So we don't indulge in our luxuries, we have our luxury.
Yeah. So I noticed, I said to Michelle, we ate 2 beautiful what are they called? Simit.
So
Almost every day I was having them with cream cheese and all sorts of lovelies going on. And I said to her, I feel like I'm putting on weight. So this is our luxuries. Other people might travel with something really cool. We travel with a pair of weight scales. And actually, that and our hammock are probably the two most useless things that we carry.
Well, we do use that. We haven't used the hammock.
Yes. I actually probably would have preferred to have my little ukulele with me. So, there we go.
So Rena C says, so last week you mentioned streaming a show, Chateau, I think. Did you get to watch it?
The Chateau, what's it called? We did get to watch it. I actually managed to watch it. I managed to download the episodes online illegally. Locked me up. You know, I managed to get the episodes because I wanted to watch it. It's called Escape to the Chateau. And did I talk about it last week then?
Yeah, you must have mentioned it.
Must have mentioned it. I don't remember mentioning it. It's a great little series. It's about a couple that bought a huge, great big money pit of a chateau in France, and the guy's name is I know him.
Richard.
Dick Strawbridge. And Dick Strawbridge actually used to be, I'll quickly go over this because I know it won't interest a lot of people. Dick Strawbridge used to be a bit of an inspiration to Michelle when we had our little farm in France, because he lived this sort of good life in the west of England. But I did notice that Dick Strawbridge has actually left his wife and found another wife for this new series. So a little bit surprised, and she's quite a lot younger than he is. He's probably a pensionable age, and she's in her 30s, I would think. But it's a great series, Escape to the Chateau. Well worth watching.
Chris is saying, great series. It's on here every day around 5 p.m. Are you watching the original series or the newer Chateau DIY series?
No, the Chateau DIY series I didn't find so interesting. I saw that as well, but you know, on the original Escape the Chateau, there's only about 3 episodes to 5 episodes per season. But on the Escape the Chateau, the DIY series, I think in season 1 there's like 15 episodes. They're all right, but they're a little bit, some I find, Chris, some I find they're just scraping the back, you know, dragging the same story over. You know, that they're a little bit more like a lot of those reality shows that you see nowadays, where they just keep sort of, you know, somebody's going to build a bridge because there's a wedding ceremony on, and they just keep milking the story over and over. I didn't find it quite as entertaining as Escape to the Chateau, the original series. I also discovered something that I didn't know. Any of you that watch Netflix might be interested. I didn't know that Netflix actually, some of the foreign movies, I've watched a few foreign movies and series on Netflix, and I've been watching them with the subtitles, and it's a bit of a pain, you know, because I'm not the fastest of reader, and sometimes it does your brain in, doesn't it, to watch something with the subtitles. And I know a lot of you are going to tell me this, but I didn't know that you could go to the menu and turn it into English spoken. So it's like, you know, like a Chinese movie dubbed into English. It's got these sort of voices on there dubbed into English. Makes it a lot easier. So it's opened up a whole new group of series on Netflix that Michelle and I can watch. Also, the series here on YouTube, if you've got YouTube Red, Kenji, I think it's called, or what about the cat? So that's a YouTube Red. That's actually set here in Turkey. I'm also thinking of filming. I've said to you 2 or 3 times before about this, of filming in a sort of the streets of Istanbul, but around our area. So tomorrow morning, I'm thinking of getting up before sunrise and getting out there and filming the streets. So I'm doing a little episode that'll show you an insight to the streets of Istanbul. Forgive me if I don't get it done. I'm definitely going to try and make this series. I think it's fascinating because I think this area where we live is beautiful. I mean, if it was not locked down most of the time, this would be a really cool place to live. There's really solid people that live around here, proper families, old families, strange sort of like characters in the street. You know, the usual sort of thing you see in real old societies. Complete sort of crackpots, really sort of odd, peculiar people, lovely people, pensioners, kids. There's a couple of kids on the corner here that live, that I think their sister might be the one that sort of screams most of the time. But they at 2 o'clock in the morning, they sit on the corner down here punching each other in the arms, and they're taking run-ups. You know, they're running up and they're punching each other in the arm. Boys do this, ladies, they do this nonsense when they're younger. They're probably about 15 or so, so they must have horrible big sort of black bruises all over their arms. But it's like, daring each other, and they go on they go on for ages, and they've been doing it for the last 3 nights out there. And I the other day, one of the old fellas at the end of the street looked out the window and told them to sort of sling their hooks, and because they're making too much noise. Another really bizarre thing here is that it's illegal. Apparently, everything's illegal in Istanbul, but nobody seems to care. 2 o'clock in the morning. I tend to stay up late at the moment, but 2 o'clock in the morning, there's guys pushing a trolley up and down the streets here during curfew, shouting at the top of their voices, "Pide, pide." They're selling the bread at 2 a.m. and most people are in bed, so they walk up with a shopping trolley, and there can be 4 or 5 guys, and they shout like kids at a football, coming out of a football pitch. And occasionally, some idiot in the street looks out and chucks their basket down and gets a bread from these guys and gives them a couple of bucks or a couple of liras for it. And the night before last that happened, and I looked out the window to film them because I thought, it's quite interesting, and they got really upset. And then the guy in the balcony opposite me here, he's a lovely chap just opposite us on the balcony. He came out because he was sort of a bit peeved by all the noise, and he's Turkish. He's a local lad, but he looked over and he said, "They're not allowed to do that." He said, in pretty good English, he said, "They're not allowed to do that. They're idiots." And he went stomping back off to bed. But that happens almost every night over this sort of Ramadan period that we've got. Those idiots come along with their shopping trolley full of sort of possibly stale bread. I don't know, but it wouldn't happen if some idiot didn't come to the window and buy it at 2 o'clock in the morning. The other crazy thing, not sure I should say really, but at virtually 3 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 I think it was, the little girl, the one that cries, she's out there with her brothers walking up and down the street. Couldn't believe it, shouting and never stops. The activity in this street, I'm sounding like I'm complaining about that. I'm not. I actually find it quite amazing. I think you might get a bit bored of it after a while, but it's like it never stops. There's always something going on in this street. It can be 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. A van turns up in the street delivering vegetables to the guy, and he rolls his shutter up and comes out and starts taking his vegetable delivery in. And then sort of 5 o'clock in the morning, the street cleaners are out there doing their sort of rounds, cleaning up the streets. And so you don't get a lot of peace, but funny enough, you do get used to it. It's interesting, very interesting. So
Linda says, if you could find a new place to settle down anywhere in the world, where do you think would be the place of choice, given you've been travelling around the world for a while now?
That's a hard question to answer. I think realistically, Linda, was it?
Yeah.
I at the moment, there's nowhere I want to settle down because we don't have any great wants to settle. I'd rather sort of stay somewhere for 3 or 4 months and then move on somewhere else. But probably being a little bit biased, but I still think Australia is one of the best places to be. I think, when I'm away, sometimes you miss some of the beauties of Australia.
Petri says, have you guys been to Egypt? And if not, is that a place you guys like to visit?
Petri, we haven't been to Egypt, but the guy that you sometimes see over my shoulder here walking around on the balcony, he's from Egypt, and he's funny. He really misses the food from back home, and he keeps telling me about it and saying, I can't wait to get back, because he's stuck here as well. He would have been back in Egypt by now, and he's kind of saying to me just how good the food is in Egypt. So he's kind of got my interest, piqued the interest a little bit in going to Egypt. But people will say to me, have you been to Egypt? And then somebody else, have you been to Colombia? Have you been here? There's so many places in the world we haven't been. I don't know when we'll be able to do them all. At some point, hopefully.
Mio says, are you near enough to smell the bread?
Yeah, I can smell it now, Mio, and the window's closed. And actually, I think I might open there. There we go. The little girl's gone home. I think the roads have quietened down. Do you want to go down and get a PD, hon?
Yeah.
See if they've got a warm one.
Linda says, completely understand that answer, Steve. As a Kiwi, I can really understand the beauties of New Zealand, Australia. I've been in South Korea for 11 years, but could never give up New Zealand for anything in the end.
Yeah, and I mean, I've lived in different parts of the world as well. So Michelle and I have lived in many different countries around the world, and that's why we struggle to settle down, to be honest. Just ask him if it's hot, Michelle. He'll know what you mean. He'll know what you mean. So yeah, we've travelled and lived in so many parts of the world. A lot of people pick up the fact that my accent is for an English accent, I guess, and we tend to consider ourselves as Australian, but English Australians. But Michelle and I have lived overseas and travelled almost all of our adult life and most of our younger life also. So I don't feel a great affinity to any one particular country, but I do feel very at home in Australia. And it's not just a bias. There's a few lads that live here, and they are wanting desperately to go overseas, and they say, where should we go, and I always say to them, go to Australia, you'll love it. And there's not much not to like about Australia. Obviously the government's as useless as every government in the world, but New Zealand the same. Linda, you're in Korea, did you say, in South Korea? I mean, we at one time wanted to settle down on the Coromandel Peninsula on the North Island, and we loved it. We just thought it was a beautiful part of the world. But then we get itchy feet and we want to travel again. Now it's just starting to rain, so I've sent Michelle down to get the bread. Hope you don't mind. She hasn't got to get wet because literally it's outside our front door, as you can remember from last week. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up. Oh, I think she may have just locked herself out though. Nope, she's all good. So, where was I? She's coming up. Look, she got the bread. She got the bread. She has the bread. Yeah, get the scales out, Michelle. Shall I sit on? Michelle wears a scarf around her face when she goes. Is it a warm one?
Yeah. People cook a little warm, I think.
Not that warm then.
It's warm. Want to feel?
Because he sometimes gives you the ones. He doesn't give you the hot ones.
No, it's given the hot ones.
It's a hot one.
He was out the back and taking off the tray.
Love the hot ones. You know, get the scales out. I'll stand on the scales while I'm eating, so I don't. Yum. We lived in France for 4 or 5 years. Our kids all speak fluent French, and we lived in France. That was a very beautiful chapter of our life, actually, and I miss a great deal. So France is another place that I really love, and we will. Hey moms, Moon over Miami is in. So France is a place I love. The UK, I mean, my family is from England originally. My father is from.
Raining out there.
It's only bread, but I tell you what, it's lovely bread. And on the back, you see all that. That looks like a semolina flour, so it's almost like a pizza base. Let me just close that window, otherwise my warm bread will go cold very quickly. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a. It's hot and stuffy today.
Separate plate or one there?
No, that's all separate. That's good. Thank you, my dear girl. Look, she's looking after me, everyone. Cup of tea there. A lovely bit of. Hang on, I'll bring it up so you can see it. Lovely feta, not a Greek feta, by the way, Turkish feta. It's a smooth one. It's not that grainy.
I like it.
So this is to die for delicious. Fresh pide. This bread is only really made, or this particular version of this bread is made for Ramadan. So this is the bread that the lads are selling when they're screaming out in the streets.
You need tea? Have you still got tea? More tea?
Yum, yum. No, I'll have that sandwich. Huh? Just talk amongst yourself for a minute, please.
We see if there's any questions. See if I've missed anything.
Did you put the kettle on?
Oh no. I thought you were going to finish that. Kettle's on.
Michelle and I get on very well, you know.
Did you answer? Petri says, I have to agree with you, your neighbour. The food in Egypt is delicious and fresh. I do miss the food. I haven't found any places that I can replicate the food.
When I put my arm up like that, the colour of the video changes a bit pinky. Well, we haven't been there, but I can imagine Egyptian food being wonderful. Any of the food from that region can be so good. I think there's a lot of delicious herbs, spices, but subtle, not particularly hot spices they'll use in Egyptian cooking. I believe that there's quite a few dishes that are good sweet dishes using saffron, but the guy across the road didn't seem to recognise that. But then I said to him, "Do you ever cook?" And he said, "No."
So Moon over Miami says, do you know if feta is made from sheep, cow or goat? I love sheep feta.
This is probably made from goat by the flavour. I mean, you can make feta with any milk, but there's a certain, those of you that know the flavour of, Michelle particularly loves sheep feta. It's a little less acrid, it's a little less pungent than the goat feta. This one here,
It's cow.
oh, it's a cow feta.
Yeah. It actually says it in English so I can understand it.
This one's delicious.
Yeah, it is a very nice one. I do like it.
Very smooth, very easy. So this one's a cow feta.
But I do like a broby.
Broby. In French, it would be, we always used to get the broby, which is sheep, feta cheese. It was just that there used to be a particularly nice one that was in the region that we were in, that Michelle loved. I'll eat any cheese. I love cheese. Cheese and wine, can't go wrong.
I love a goat's cheese, I must say.
You don't like the goats? No, Michelle doesn't like the goat. We used to have a goat farm near us, and you could smell it. We would go for long walks in the country, and you can smell a goat farm from several kilometers away. And I don't mean it smells like manure or anything. You can smell that pungent goat milk aroma. It gets in the air. Excuse me, guys. I've only had breakfast.
You did say that you were going to eat this.
I did say.
You weren't just going to sit and look at it.
Nadim, this is really good bread. Really good bread. And it doesn't get any fresher, does it, than being baked in the baker below my feet. Basically, I've said this before, if you haven't heard me say it before, the floor of our apartment gets warm from the baker. And delicious, Michelle. Thank you.
That's all right.
I would have gone down and taken you down there, but what happened last time when I was doing the live stream, as I go into the stairwell to go down to the baker's, I lose connection. That's all right, it does reconnect. But when I reconnect, when I come up, it goes from 4G to 3G, so I lose some of the quality.
So Nadine says, I'm fasting, Steve. Mio says, I'm eating with you homemade vegan banana nut muffin. Moon over Miami says, I'm with Michelle, sheep feta, buttery smooth, feta with watermelon. Like any feta with any fruit is delicious, with mango.
Feta with mango, feta with watermelon, feta with fruit really goes well.
Nadine says, can't wait to have some bread later. And Rena C says, now you're eating, yay, and I'm getting hungry.
I was hungry, I only had breakfast.
And Mio, and Mio says, underfloor heating. It was when we first arrived, it was nice. The floor was warm because it was quite cold.
This bread develops well. It's a little bit like a what's the Greek bread that we sometimes used to make?
Yeah, that one.
With the olive.
Yeah, I know.
I've mentioned it so many times before. It is absolutely delicious. Look at the crumb in there. It's nice and open. There's plenty of stretch in it. It's warm. This is still warm from the oven. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm making you hungry. But this is the stuff that's a killer for me. This is bread is what, if you want to, by the way, if any of you are struggling with weight and you want to get rid of, quite a few pounds, cut out your bread if you have bread in your diet, and you'd be surprised how quickly the pounds. Michelle and I had a similar sort of experience when we were touring with our kids, where we were putting a lot of weight on because we were eating particularly well, and it was actually only really cutting out the bread that stopped it.
Thinking of focaccia.
Focaccia, yeah, focaccia.
And Cheryl said just made sourdough bagels this morning. They're yummy.
This sort of bread though is better than the supermarket sort of white loaf.
Moon over Miami says you're making me want to go and bake bread.
Well, but the only time this sort of bread doesn't make me want to go and bake bread is when it's just in the baker below. And I know that I'd struggle to make a pide as good as this. Well, particularly with just a stove top.
Rena C said, I recently made fresh bread from your Sicily episode, No Need recipe. It came out amazing.
Yeah, we were looking, by the way, at some of our Sicilian videos, and Michelle and I noticed that there was a whole series of videos we did touring around Europe that didn't come on this channel at all. No. We never put it up on Steve's Kitchen channel, or Steve Owens channel. So I'm thinking of maybe sort of remastering them a little bit and putting them up in the next sort of, when we get a chance, because at the moment there's just too much going on. But there's some really good stuff that's got barely sort of 20, 30 views on it, but it's still really lovely examples of the trips that we've done.
Paul Webber said, I made the Cuban bread from your video last night and we'll be making Cuban sandwiches today. That
Cuban bread is so good. Paul, did you get lard? Did you manage to get hold of some lard? And what did you use to, I know the Cuban bread, the influence of the Cuban bread is very strong in the sort of Florida region of the US. And they tend to, in Cuba, and I think in that area, they tend to use the frond of the leaf to get that lovely little split down the center of the bread. What did you use? I think I used, if I remember, because I couldn't, we were in the city at the time, I think I used a shoelace. You can actually use a shoelace or shoelace type material and just soak it in water and lay it across the bread. And it gives that lovely split. But Cuban bread is delicious, and it's down to the lard. It's down to the lard. It's people shun away from lard in cooking. I'm glad we kind of moved away from the nonsense of COVID and just having a little chat about food. It's always good, isn't it? Particularly chatting about baking.
The Moon of Miami says yeast hard to find in the US these days. Had to make my own from raisins and grapes.
Not too hard to make, is it, moms? I call Moon over Miami mom. She's not my mom, as you Americans would say, but she's that's her acronym. But a lot of people have been experimenting with brewer's yeasts, and that seems to be working for quite a few people. Of course, if you're doing sourdough, Chris, the sourdough baguettes also are very good if you're going to make something with that that style of bake.
Paul said, I save the fat when I make bacon for breakfast, so I use that. That tastes delicious.
Oh, wow. Double whammy. So you've got dripping, basically.
Claire said, I followed your Irish wheaten recipe this morning. The whole loaf has already been eaten.
Man. Delicious. I think I'm still got a little bit of a sweet tooth, and if there's a sourdough loaf on my channel, a sourdough fruit loaf, a raisin loaf, and we bake it either on a tray or in a Dutch oven. I can't remember,
Dutch oven.
but either way, it works really well as long as you've got the temperature up high. And if you do a sourdough loaf like the one, you can leave a link to it,
I'm
Michelle.
just getting that now.
If you make a sourdough loaf like that, the nutty crust, the crust is just amazing. You end up with this thick baked crust, which is all the flavour, and it's because of the sugar content in that loaf that you get a really dark crust and a beautiful crumb inside. That's one of my favourite breads, I think. That, and I'm a bit into my sourdoughs at the moment. If I'm back home, I would be back into the sourdoughs. I'd probably be doing sort of sourdough baguettes every day. But the fruit loaf is with a little bit of cinnamon in it is really delicious. It's my last bit of bread, so those of you that are not enjoying it, I'm going to pop this bit of bread in my mouth. I won't eat any more, promise you.
So Marina of Miami says Cuban bread is great, especially pan fried.
Mm.
And Chris Hereford said, I tried your 3-tier chocolate cake today, Steve. Boy, was I happy. That's a good recipe, that one.
That was also done in Italy, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe it was. Yes, we were very we were very productive there.
That was also done in our little kitchen in Sicily, and actually, probably not the right time of year. Is it orange season at the moment? It's probably not orange season, although is it getting there? Yeah, maybe actually orange season. Yes, it's probably a little late for good oranges, but in Sicily, we made a whole big batch of candied oranges. I love candied oranges, and they're not like the candied peel you get in the supermarket. They're just, you can eat them just as you can almost snack on them. And we made absolutely tons of candied oranges, and that was sort of January time, wasn't it? So that would have been early part of the year with the lovely Sicilian oranges. Really, if you haven't made candied peel, I've got 2 or 3 recipes for candied peel. But the one we made in Italy was probably the best candied peel I've ever had, because I was making bucket loads of it.
And then you coat it in a little bit in chocolate.
Yeah, if you want to give them as a gift, you can just dip them in a little bit of milk or dark or white chocolate if you want, and you can make little gift boxes up. And they're people who, even if you don't really like candied peel, I challenge you not to enjoy raw, fresh candied peel with a little bit of chocolate on it. It's delicious. You don't get any of that sort of pithy sort of sourness that you get from eating orange peel. By the way, if you think the idea of orange peel isn't great, you're wrong. What else? Any other questions there, Michelle?
Linda's asking, I need a good recipe for wheat-free and gluten-free bread. Do you have any that you recommend?
I do have a recipe for a gluten-free roll, I think, but I mean, one of the easiest gluten-free, to be honest, nowadays, some of the gluten-free bread mixes you can buy in the supermarkets is not expensive, in Australia anyway, is not expensive, and it's got all the right contents in. Our good friend Anne from Easy Gluten Free, she's not doing a lot of videos at the moment, but she's got some good stuff. Nature's Fairy, another channel, one of our old friends here on YouTube. She's got some great recipes for gluten-free bread. There's a lot out there, but actually a lot of those gluten-free bread doughs that you can buy, they work really well. Pizza doughs. I think actually Rick was saying he was making something gluten-free last week.
Yes, just with a packet.
Yeah. Flour. So they do work very well. I mean, alternatively, you have to research all the different flours that you use. I think I've got a recipe for gluten-free bread flour that I make myself, or did I ever put that recipe up?
I think we did the rolls and maybe
we might not have done
Irish bread. Not sure.
No, the soda. I think the soda bread is not gluten-free.
No. Okay.
No. If you want a really good yeast-free recipe, a soda bread is really good. The problem with soda breads is they tend to they're nice fresh, and they don't last very long. Once you've baked them, you want to eat them. You can't really eat them after an hour or so. They lose all their structure, all their goodness, in my opinion.
So Orlando says, I bet that gyro meatloaf recipe of yours would be great with the bread you're eating right now. We love it, by the way.
The gyro or gyro, gyro, if you're to pronounce it the proper Greek way, that meat, it's kind of a meatloaf, but it's cooked in a way. You know, when you go here, when we go here for a kebab, if anything was open here in Turkey, the meat that they carve for you is always this sort of caramelized dark meat on the outside. So they get it. You want the meat that's gone up to the rotisserie spit and got lovely and dark. So you want, that's where the flavor is. If you see anyone carving off a kebab, whatever you want to call them, and the meat hasn't got color on it, then you're not going to get a lot of flavor on it. So the idea with that particular recipe, and that's an old recipe now on my channel, that goes back a long time, was that we made sort of like a meat loaf, but very much meat content, and you bake it in the oven, so you end up with all that goodness, all that great flavor, and then you can slice it up and put it into your own homemade pita breads. I've got pita breads on the channel, so you can check. I'll tell you, put the kebab one up and the pita bread recipe. Pita bread you do need to bake in the oven, and the gyro or gyro, it's actually gyro, gyros, is a great combination, really lovely. So you end up with heaps and heaps. You've got to bake it fairly, not too deep, to get lots of color on it, and then you get the real flavor of a good gyro or gyro. I get a lot of comments. I used to get a lot of comments on that about it should have French fries in it, because in Greece, a lot of people, when they buy them a kebab like that, they have got to have French fries in it. Now it's quite nice. It's quite nice to have French fries, chips, whatever you want to call them, in there. But it isn't definitely not. It's not definitely. Most definitely is not the best way to have it. I mean, that's just padding. You know, the reason they started doing that in the big wraps was because it's a lot cheaper to put up some fried potatoes inside, which taste delicious, and a little bit of meat and sauces and everything. It's certainly not the traditional way to do it. It's become, over the last sort of 20 years or so, you see it more and more full of French fries because it's cheap. You know, there's no money involved in fried potatoes, and people love it. But the best kebabs that I've ever had, or gyros that I've ever had, have been with lots of beautiful lamb meat inside and lots of fantastic salad and good, you know, flavored salad, soft herbs and things inside there, and a good sauce. That's the way to go. And then have if you really want potato fries or French fries with it, put them on the side. Because as soon as I go into a place where I see them stuffing sort of potato fries into the gyro, or the kebab, I know they're cheating me, because they're basically putting cheap potato into a big wrap. So anyway, yes, that's a good recipe, lovely recipe, long time ago. I mean, it must have done that for 6 years or more. Well, we've been traveling for 5, so it was before that.
And Mio says, thanks for all your videos and love you both are fab. I love watching you.
Thank you, Mio. Thank you. And we are starting to get a nice sort of following now, people that don't mind us doing the travel videos. When I first started doing this, having been in Steve's Kitchen for so long, for the first year or so of doing this, I got a lot of sort of not aggressive, but I got a lot of people were turned off by it, because, you know, I wasn't just cooking, and so we lost a great deal. We took that risk.
So Chris said, what's the most difficult thing you've made recipe wise?
It's hard to say, Chris, but the one that comes to mind immediately when you say that is possibly because we talked about it recently, Michelle and I, was the panettone. Yeah. When we were in Sicily, and I'm always, panettones when I buy them outside of Italy have never tasted that good, but when I had them in Sicily, the panettone is to die for. It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, little fragrance of orange, fresh orange in there. Can I get a little bit more bread? Sure. I'm going to eat some more, guys. Sorry, I'm absolutely salivating. No, I don't need any more cheese. So that panettone was so delicious in Sicily that I said to Michelle, well, we've got to make it. So I tried to constantly and make it as easy as possible, because if you know how to make a panettone, it's a slow make process. You know, you've got to let that dough prove overnight, and it takes a couple of days to make a really good panettone. So I spent some time, Chris, trying to make the panettone, to perfect the panettone, and that was hard. And I actually burnt through heaps and heaps of good ingredients trying to get a fast panettone. Good bread is generally quite easy to make, but some breads, particularly the more enriched breads, can be quite tricky.
It was because you were trying to make it trying to find an easier way or quicker way of making it.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
apart from that, no, I don't find many recipes too difficult to make. Mainly because I'm such a good cook.
Orlando says those recipes are fair dinkum. Dwayne's just come in. Hello, Stephen Michelle.
Dwayne, you always come in when I'm thinking of ending, but I'm going to stay on a little while longer today, mate. How are you?
More bread to eat.
I've got my fresh PA. It's still a little bit warm. It's starting to cool down. The back is like good pizza dough. It's got what looks to be like a semolina flour or coarse flour on it. I've got a lovely soft. I promised I wouldn't eat anymore, didn't I? I'm so hungry. And
this is the one without the egg. Last time we had the one with the egg on, didn't we?
Yeah, I didn't rate the egg version of the bread any better than the non-egg version of the pide. It was lovely, but it wasn't any better.
So Dwayne says I'm good. It's a time zone thing, I think. It's getting the time right for everybody's hard.
It is. And so we just tend to try and go with the time that suits Michelle and I. We've had a little bit of rain.
Yeah, it was raining when I went there to get the bread.
I think I was saying this last night. We had a bit of a thunderstorm. Now, I'll tell you a little story last night. We had this big clap of thunder, and I was just looking out the window here. I'll just turn the camera around so you can see. So where that gentleman is there, suddenly down that street, oh, hang on, you can't see my finger. Down this street, the dog, our street dog, came running. There was a big clap of thunder, and he came running down the street, and you could see he was petrified. You know, there was a big bolt of lightning in the air, and he was petrified. And I said to Michelle, we were watching something. I said, I'm going to go down and see him. I got downstairs, and he came running over to me. He's not normally that friendly because he's a street dog. He doesn't live in anyone's house. And he came running over to me and sort of huddled up close, and he was shaking because of the thunder. So I got down. I was giving him a good, stroke and just reassuring him. And I stayed there with him for about
ages.
20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I waited with him till the thunder stopped. And then he went off, but I think he was just so glad to have somebody with him, and there was no one out on the street. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. This is just a story. I know it sounds sort of like, but anyway, it was just really nice to be with him and just to sort of comfort him. But the thunder was pretty loud, and a lot of dogs don't like it. He was trying to come in with us. He wanted to come in the apartment, but we're not allowed, as far as I know, to have animals in. Anyway, he's a street dog, very clean street dog. Haven't got fleas or anything like that. At least I don't think so. But when I came in, my hands were filthy. It looked like I've been working on a car or something. So I had to wash the grime off my hands. And it's not a he. And his name is Kurt, I think. Her name is Kurt. So that's why I tend to think it's a he, because it's got a name like a boy's name.
Annie says, I was taught that holes in bread are caused by not kneading it long enough. Lots of holes in that bread.
Generally, Annie, it's more caused by a wetter dough. No, it wouldn't be to do with quite not the what's the word? No, that's not correct, Annie. Generally, a lot of holes in bread is to do with the structure and the the liquid, the hydration level. So you'll often get a lot of holes in bread like focaccia, breads like this, big holes like that, where it's got a lot of moisture in it and good gluten. So in a way, if the gluten buildup wasn't very good, and that means you haven't worked it at all, you may not get holes in the bread because there's no gluten in there. The reason you tend to get a lot of holes in breads, such as overnight breads, which are quite often a wetter dough, is because the gluten builds up over the period of proofing, and then you get some nice holes and structure in there. So no, not really the case. Anyone else want to talk bread with me?
Yeah, so well, Kelly's in, says hi, Steve and Michelle. Hi,
Hey, Kelly. G'day.
Orlando says, we enjoy baking bread with you, even if it's on YouTube. Bon appetit and keep on keeping on. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you very much, Orlando.
Dwayne says, how is the cheese over there?
This feta I've got, Dwayne, is absolutely delicious. It's actually, Michelle's just established, it's actually a cow's feta, but it's a nice smooth one. It's tart, but not too tart. It's not crumbly. I quite like a crumbly feta if it's in a salad and things. It's not so good for spreading. Good flavour. Cheese. The other cheese we had recently, Dwayne, was a cheese that I bought from a butcher's not far from here who does pork, and he had some cheese which was like a very young cheddar cheese. Not a lot of flavour, not a lot of salt, but it started to flavour up. We've almost got to the end of it now, but it's got a little saltiness as it's starting to mature. So even a very young, when we were, sorry, I bounce about a bit, but when we were traveling through Italy in the Alpen sort of northern areas of Italy, we actually closer to Venice, Udine, if anyone knows, not far from Udine. We were up in the mountains and we went to a beautiful cheese factory, no, a cheese producer, but he was an artisan cheese producer. Beautiful old place. I wish we'd had YouTube at the time and I could have filmed it. So he had these big old copper vats full of milk, and he was cutting the curds with his hand, and he was stirring everything, and he made these huge, great big wheels of cheese. They must have been about 30 centimeters, a foot in diameter. And you could buy them from him. They weren't expensive. They might have been about 30 euros equivalent at the time. But for a big cheese, that's so cheap, and they were this sort of deep, and you buy them from him, and they were young. They were very young cheeses, so they had almost no salty flavour to them at all, and they were just so easy to eat. So Michelle and I, we bought a whole one, didn't we? We bought a half one. We bought a half one to eat with the kids while we were travelling, and a whole one to take back to our little farmhouse to have at a later date. Now, yeah, we wanted to mature it, and so we stored it in our cave in our dark area of the house, and we let that cheese get stronger and stronger till it was almost like a really strong cheddar cheese, like a really rich Comté or a strong cheddar. So that's really the only difference, between buying a very young cheese, which we bought about 10 days ago from the butchers down here, and it was quite plain, and now it's even within 10 days it started to develop a really nice flavour. So excuse me, I'll eat this last little bit of bread and I'll be with you. Questions away, Michelle.
So Diablo Mum says, my favourite is ciabatta, has lots of holes.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray Stewart said, hi folks, ciabatta is my favourite as well and easy to make. And,
I would say ciabatta.
Okay. And Paul Webber says, could you help me out with the Aussie slang? What exactly does fair dinkum mean?
It means absolutely true, real. I mean it. It means, would be the equivalent would be absolutely or no kidding. So that's what it means, really.
And Charlotte says, Steve, I've learned a lot from your kitchen videos. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you very much. And we've still got lots to give and still lots to learn. And I'm sorry when I started this live stream that it was all about, being a little bit down and a little bit sort of like wishing we could get on, because when I come on and chat to you guys and girls, many years ago I got told off for just saying the word guys because it wasn't the right thing to say to girls, but guys and girls. Yeah, I feel even now. Do you feel upbeat, Michelle?
Yeah, much better. When we were talking about doing a live stream, I said, we'll save it till Sunday. So something to look forward to.
Yeah. It does kind of lift our spirits. Even though I can't hear you and you're typing, I can see the comments flipping up, and I can hear, in my mind what you're saying. So it's good stuff. It would be nice. There was a time back in the early days of Google Plus when they first brought out the um, what was it, the Google Hangouts, that you could just call people into the live stream and chat with them. I know you can still do that, but you need a lot of gear, and we haven't got it.
So Diablo Mum says, "You made me happy. We've made you happy. Yay!"
A win-win situation.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy because the crust is lovely. It's got a real caramelized bread. It's sort of like a sourdough, but it's not. And I think it's because the yeast they're using is really good yeast.
So Muna in Miami says, "I came in late. Do you two go out, walk in the sun?"
We do,
Not for 3 days.
but we've had 3 days lockdown. That's why I'm feeling a little bit grouchy.
We do every day otherwise, don't we? Unless they tell us we can't go out and then we have to stay in.
Yeah, we try to get out. We try to get out at least once a day.
You quite often will go out 2 or 3 times a day.
I go out more than Michelle, I must admit. Sometimes when I'm out, some of the local guys say to me, "Where's Michelle?" I say, "Oh, she's all right. She's busy doing her own thing." I don't go out often without you.
No, you don't. No.
But
you might go down
do.
to chat to the guys downstairs.
do,
and
to go down.
You like to chat.
I'm a social holic. Chris and Miriam, no, I think they're still locking themselves down pretty firm. There's another couple that are here in Istanbul, in Turkey, but they literally, I don't think they've been out. Michelle and I have taken it a very different way. We're very conscious of social distancing, but we're also very conscious that we're social characters and we need to get out and exercise. Do you see what I just did there?
No.
I just went and got a handful of, I didn't even consciously notice it, but I leant over there and I got a handful of pistachio nuts, beautiful Turkish pistachio nuts.
I thought you just finished eating the bread, that's it, and now he's eating nuts.
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
That's all right,
And then
never mind.
I grabbed a handful of pistachio nuts, and then I could kick back and I could take Simon's money and get myself a beer.
Or even Paul's.
Oh, Paul's. Sorry, it was Paul. Get Paul's money and go and get myself a beer. Thank you, Paul.
Not today, you can't, because the shops are closed.
No, I can't because it's shut. Kick back with a handful of pistachio nuts. And I could talk to you for another hour.
So Annie says, "I'm glad that you can go out some days, keeps you sane."
Well, that's the thing that's getting to us at the moment. It's not the fact that we can't go out, and we can go out some days, but there's just not much to see out there. And we can't go for a really big walk. And even if we do, all the streets, most of the streets are closed and empty, and everyone's sort of a bit paranoid. So we're getting this sort of, it's not the best.
I mean, it's nice to see Istanbul not busy, so you can see all of the beautiful architecture and things.
Yeah, it was nice for a week, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's not buzzing and.
It was nice. It was nice for a week, and now we're sort of at the stage where we kind of really, we could do with upping the game. And we were thinking, for those of you that are hearing this for the first time, we were thinking of doing a runner, basically, trying to get out of Istanbul and go and do something exciting. I don't know if it's possible, but I am getting to the stage where I really could do with bringing some more excitement into our days.
So Petrie's saying, "My mum called my dad a social butterfly because he would chat a lot before leaving church, but she seemed to turn into one because we, my brother and I, would have to get her as kids." Lol.
Yeah, I need social interaction. Michelle does as well, but probably less than me. But we'd probably end up walking the Camino de Santiago, and there'd be nobody else on it. You know, because everyone says one of the things about the Camino de Santiago is there's a lot of people on it, so you can feel sometimes like you're surrounded by other people doing the walk. But just my luck, Michelle and I do the Camino, and we'd be the only two doing it. We like, you know, walking along for sort of 35 days without seeing a soul. They get to each village and they're all sort of shut up, and people are just peering out from behind their blinds with their masks on their face and sort of like handing things out the windows with gloves. That'd drive me around a bend if that happens.
The moon over Miami says vitamin D equals sun. Get more sun, at least an hour outside, it cheers us up.
It does. Cheers us. A bit of sunshine cheers everybody up.
The weather was beautiful last week, wasn't it?
It was. We are getting to hour and 50. Do you think, should I stop now? I mean, I don't mind going on a little bit longer if people really want to, but I think these live streams get a bit too long, and perhaps people won't want to watch them back. So that's the question, quickly.
Oh, it's all quiet.
So no, I think actually we're going to call it a day. We'll have a chat again in the next couple of days. Now, what I will try and do is take you out on the streets of Istanbul, and now you'll all have to wear your masks because it's dreadful. Every square inch of air out there is polluted with virus. I will be taking one for the team and doing it without a mask, whether or not people approve or not. But I'll take you for a walk around the streets of Istanbul. Hopefully, weather permitting, internet permitting, we'll do it sometime in the week. I'll give you at least half a day's notice on. So, love to you all. Take care. Thank you everybody for coming in today. You've been absolutely fantastic. Michelle's going to come over.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I was just checking nobody was saying anything.
Be good. Take care, and we will see you
In the
for
next
another
live or
live.
ordinary video soon.
Take care. Be good.